The biggest complaint about all of the Frontier games as of late has been pathing, but in Planet Coaster 2, that is officially fixed. However, there's still so much to discover when it comes to the wonderful world of pathing, so thank you all for choosing me as I guide you through the wonderful world of paths in Planet Coaster 2. My name is Leaf, and let's jump right into it. Now first things first, the best way to access the path menu is going to be right down here in the bottom right. Alternatively, there is also the radial menu, which is a new feature, which is kind of cool. Over here, you can select the path one right over here. Now, there is so much to uncover over here, but let's go through the basics. These are the three different types of paths. We have guest paths, we have queues for rides, and we also have staff paths. Guest paths will always be kind of like this. You can have your railings on them or choose not to. Queues are a little bit different though, because they are only allowed to be 2 meters in width. And staff paths function very much like the guest paths that we saw. Within all of these different types of paths are a wide variety of different styles that you can use to really customize your parks. All of these different paths have so many different kinds of textures and different varieties to help you make your park exactly how you want it to look. Many of these are also flexi-color too, which means you can either have a path that looks like this, very nice and brown, or you could change it out for something a little bit more colorful. You might also notice that all of these have railings on them too. You can switch these on or off, and there's 5 different kinds of railings that this game comes with. And the best part about it, you can change out the color of the railing too. Just come over here to the color section in the customized style, and then change it out. And yes, this also works for the queues as well as the staff paths. But there are so many different features in the actual path menus that we're going to dive into today. So returning players from the Planet series might notice that the path tool is actually a little bit different. This is now called the line builder tool, which is the newest way that you can make your paths. However, if you want the classic Frontier style, you can switch it over to classic paths. You can change the length on these as well to make it as long as you want it to be. And you can also change out the width to make a lot more bigger plazas. Now going back to the line builder, we're going to be diving into this just a little bit more. There's line style, which allows you to have nice curved paths like this. However, if you want straight paths with nice sharp edges, you can do that. Terrain style covers pretty much anything to do with impacting terrain. Automatic just allows it to sit nice and tight above the paths. Suspended might result in a little bit of something like this, where it does look a little free floaty. However, in going into the terrain brush, you can see that if you flatten the foundation right below it, these are actually going to be suspended, which allows you to do different things such as put water under it. Yeah, look at that. That's pretty cool. Now, ground is a little bit interesting because this one is being a little finicky. Hold on. Okay, ground essentially just places any terrain that's supposed to be below the path right under it. So let's just say I want this to be a nice big hill right up here. I can have that really come to life and just place it. Now you might be noticing how I am kind of impacting the height of the paths. I'm simply holding down the shift key, which allows me to really play with the height of the paths and figure out what I want to make out of it. Now we also have connection types. Now I'm not going to lie, I've been doing a little bit of research on this, and I have the square on the left and the angle on the right. No clue how this is supposed to work. Now coming back down here, you do see that we also have more fixed length over here, so you can really play around with that and get perfect amounts of length for whatever pathways you're making. The same goes for line width too. If you want these big open plazas, you can absolutely do that by using the maximum of 24 meters. It's very helpful. Now there is a little bit of extra stuff right down here. You can change out how the camera will follow. So this is typically how it is by default. I particularly don't like this, but if you're making a big park in franchise or career mode, switch it out to camera will follow. That will essentially allow you to place down as many paths as you want without getting too disoriented. There's also one called camera will follow and rotate, which basically rotates the camera to wherever the path is facing. Now, angle snap is one of my favorite tools in the game over here. If I'm making a nice big curved path, I want to make sure that those curves are exactly as I want them to look. So switching these out for whatever angles that you choose can really help make the difference. Especially if you want a nice big round plaza, you can do that with the 90-degree tool. And there you go, you have a perfect circle. The merge tool is very interesting because typically you can see I added the path right there. However, what's very interesting is that sometimes you can overlay path, kind of like that. However, my merge tool was off. If I switch my merge tool on, it results in something a little bit different. So let's just say, for example, I want to have this kind of continue in right in the circle over here. I want a secondary path. I can switch merge on when selecting a different path texture, and I essentially just kind of line that up right on the middle in here. Working height is also very helpful in case if you are trying to get very precise with your paths. You can set these to whatever increments you want. I have this one on 3 meters. However, if you're like, I need to build at least 20 meters up in the sky, you can set this to 20, and then it will automatically shift up there and it won't change from that height. And while I'm on the subject, you can see that I did finally find out what that connection type is. This one was angle right over here, so if a path does cross over itself, it will course correct and make a much more rounder curve. However, if you have the square one selected, it will be a lot more sharp like this. Height snap is also very helpful as well. I have it currently set to 1 meter, which should basically allow 1 meter increments in between each path. If you're building with the wall sets in general, you can also find out that these are in 4 meter increments, at least the full walls are. Each wall set comes with 3 different wall heights. You have 1 meter, you have 2 meter, and you also have 4 meter. So if you're trying to build a building and you're like, I need a path to go on the top of the building, you can change height snap over to 4 meters, and it will automatically level off at 4 meters. And there you go, you can have perfectly leveled paths. Now going back to the classic paths from days of Planet Zoo and Planet Coaster, you can see that these are very much in small little increments. It's extremely helpful if you're trying to get those small little details, but there really isn't much else to say about these. The only thing I guess that you could say is good is that they honestly have a very good kind of curve to them. So if you do want to build some really nice curved pathways, that is going to be very helpful for you. The draw tool is one of my favorites though. If we pop in here, we can see that we can pretty much draw these on, but let's take a look at what everything does. First of all, I have my current line style on curve. This essentially allows me to make nice big organic looking plazas. This is going to be so helpful for like your entrance areas. If you're making something around a pool, that's going to be so helpful right there. However, if you want a bit more of an angular one, you can switch that one out for straight, and it creates a much more sharper turn with these. It's going to be absolutely helpful if you're trying to line out where a building is. And of course, this one also comes with working height, length snap, as well as angle snap, so it's going to be very helpful. For example, if you want to make a perfectly round kind of plaza, kind of like we did over there, you would switch this out for curve, you would switch this out for 90, and whatever kind of length that you want it to be, you can switch it out for that. So you essentially draw a straight line, then you curve it in itself, and then you write out the rest of them kind of like that. And boom, you have a perfect circle. Now, I can see this being absolutely helpful in case if you're doing some kind of advanced path work, kind of like right in here. So yeah, you can see me kind of just doing all these different circles on each other. I absolutely love this. This is so fun. And yeah, if you're watching this in the distant future of Planet Coaster 2's past, we couldn't turn off rain at this point, which is kind of silly. So enjoy the little bit of a wet tutorial. Moving on from there, we have an absolutely amazing tool too. We have the stamp builder. Again, this is very much like the other pieces where it's kind of exactly as it says. This allows you to just place down these nice big square pathways and really create these nice big plazas. Not only squares, but you also do have hexagons, which is a very helpful shape, especially if you're trying to plan out a layout. I'm just waiting for someone to make a civilization themed map with all of this. This is so cool. Not only that, but you also have octagons, which is also, again, a very helpful piece. You can line these up and you can see that they do kind of snap together. So in case if I want to tuck that one right in there, those edges do line up. And lastly, we also have a pentagon, which just very easily snaps in on itself. Not exactly the most useful shape in the world, but it definitely will help out in some cases. Kind of like that. And again, these have all those same features that we talked about before. If you want it to be kind of like a ground piece, you can set those up kind of like that right there. I bet some of you can do some really awesome stuff with that. And if you're not a big fan of that point snapping, you can turn it off so you can kind of freeball it kind of like this. Or say, for example, you want to fill out this little section in here, you absolutely can. Or if you don't want that section to kind of overlap itself, you can just turn off your merge and then you can kind of place these all down. It's very helpful. All right, but that all pales in comparison to the rounding tool. This is a lifesaver to me as of late, because if you look at this, we have all these very sharp corners. If I just hit down with this, it rounds out some of those pieces right there, and it makes it so much easier to work with. Now, it is a little bit finicky. I found that sometimes your paths don't really want to be rounded out. However, if you use a stamp tool, I found that it's very easy to get these nice curvy plazas, which is so helpful. And again, you can do that with the corners of these guys up here. You can change out the strength of it as well to make sure that you have a lot more stronger kind of curves. You can change out the brush size too to make sure that, you want your nice big plazas to actually be rounded out. Very easy for that. And your brush height too. So say, for example, if you do have multiple levels, if you just drag it all the way throughout there, it'll just smooth them all out. Now this one over here is a lifesaver for me. This is the customize brush. You can use this for all three of these path types. But essentially what you do, you have that selected, and if you come into customize style, now let's just say I want a nice bright white path. Actually, let's say blue. Let's say I want a nice bright blue path in here. With the customize brush tool selected, I can just drag this all throughout here, and it makes all these paths nice and bright blue. Now you can also add this on with whatever railings you want. You can't add it for path extras though. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but you can see if I want to change out that railing type, it does it for me. Now last but not least is the edit tool. This is the unsung savior of this entire thing. So basically, if I have a little kind of connection issue right over here, if I use this and then sometimes it'll do like multiple fence posts at once. If I select a single fence post and I move it onto another one, you can see that it definitely does snap right into position, and it helps create a little bit more of a smoother transition. So yeah, just be careful if you select the wrong one. That's why I love the undo key or Control Z. Instead, you just keep on playing around with it until it looks good. And then from there, you can kind of push it back a little bit and say you want to round that out. You can use the rounding tool again. Now, again, this is one of those issues where I'm like, I really have found the rounding tool to be a little bit difficult. So if you want to redo that, just redo the path at that rate. It's kind of easy to do so. So with all that being said, those are the path overviews, but we have only just done the guest paths. We also have a bunch of cube ones as well, which is again the very much same thing. So say for example, I want a nice straight queue to go all the way down here. I can do that. I have my length snap on. So you can see it's right there. It's set to 7 meters. If I want to turn that down a little bit though, I can change it to 2 meters. And because my angle snap is on right now, it allows me to make these very sharp turns. And if I change that back down to length snap off, I can essentially make these cattle pens really functional. And basically all you need to do is just take that with angle snap on, then just curve it over itself, and then it automatically does it. Now I haven't found a way to make these actually square yet. I think someone is experimenting with it. Unfortunately, we do not have the path editor for queue lines just yet, but hopefully we can see that coming soon. And yes, the classic paths also work with this, so in case if you want to build it the old way, you absolutely can. And the customized brush is also here once again to save us all. We can change out these colors. Let's just say I want to change it to a nice bright white. I can change that and then just paint it over, and all those paths get colored in that nice beautiful white. Last but not least, we also have the staff path Try saying that 5 times fast, but the staff path just functions as a path that only your staff can access. Your guest cannot walk onto it. So this is the perfect place to hide your, say for example, your staff buildings in career mode, as well as any other unsightly utilities, such as the power generator. Apologies for what you're seeing on the screen right here. My capture card does not like the heat maps in this game. And once again, these have all those wonderful functions. Say for example, we have these square paths right there that you can just stamp them down with. Yeah, you can just stamp those down and it's just very beautiful. Yep, they also have the edit tool. So say for example, I do not like this little one. I can change that out and just merge it in itself. There we go. Awesome. And of course, they also have the customized brush. There really isn't too many staff paths. In fact, there's only one. However, you can swap these colors out for pretty much anything else. So yeah, you can see it's just very nice and pretty like that. So that covers it for the basics of the paths. Now let's get into a little bit more fun. And yeah, you can essentially remove these so easy with the demolish brush. I got that by going right down here. It's the second to last one from the right, and you just drag it right over. It's so helpful. Just be careful. You have to set it to paths only if you just want to remove the paths. So yeah, let's make a nice big plaza. All right, so I want to start with a big circular plaza. So what I'm doing, I have angle snap at 90%, and I have my length snap at 24 meters. This is going to essentially allow us to make a nice big entry plaza. And you can see we do have a little bit of curvature issues. So if we pop in here with the edit tool, you can see that there are 2 posts right next to each other that are kind of giving each other issues. So we just merge that in on itself, pop in with the rounding tool, and it just fixes it. So I really don't like this color. I want a nice big cobblestone path. So I switch it out for cobblestone right over here. And then I have add rails on. I want the railings to be white, so we just paint over that and it looks very pretty right after that. Now, say for example, I want to remove the inside of this. Well, it's very easy to do so. At least I think it is. I'm gonna make this up on the fly. We're gonna go down to 8 meters, then do one big circle right in the middle. I should probably change it out for a color that I will absolutely notice. And make sure that merge is on. There we go. Hopefully that we can do this now. Great. So I do have that now. So essentially what I can do is just go down to the bulldoze tool and just remove it. There's also another really helpful way to remove these pathways if you don't want them in the middle over here. You can actually use the delete stamp tool right in here. And it essentially just allows you to stamp out whatever pathways that you don't want in here. So say for example, I don't want a nice big kind of oblong shape like this. I just go in here with all these stuff selected and yeah, there you go. And yep, pop in here, round these out one more time. And you can see the edit tool is exactly what we need it to be right here. We pop in here, we kind of merge these out with the rest of the fence posts, and then we can essentially just fix this entire plaza up. And yeah, if you want it to be absolutely perfect, it does take a little bit of fiddling around. So just get to know the tools before you start to make your big projects and stuff. It's very helpful to kind of play around in a test map to figure out how these tools actually work. So we have that right there, but what some people might notice is that in franchise or in career mode or in any other mode really, you might start to notice that your guests start to throw stuff on the ground. Or maybe they might complain about being tired. That's where the customize extra tool comes in. Essentially, this only works on the guest paths right over here. So what I'm using is the line builder, and I come over here to customize extras, and then I switch on path extras. Now from in here, I can select multiple items. Say for example, I want the aquatic bench. Actually, no, say I want the planet coaster bench. That one looks better. And say I want the second planet coaster bin. Okay, I think you can only do one at a time, which is a little sad. So you can switch in between the benches and the bins, and then you can essentially just make these automatic little paths. It's very, very helpful, especially if you're one to make big career maps. These are going to be your bread and butter, essentially. But I don't want that in here. I want to make a nice big plaza. Now, if you're like me and you like to build a little bit more realistic, you might notice that sometimes we need some big trees in here. Planet Coaster 2 comes with a bunch of useful trees. Particularly, I'm fond of ones with very tall canopies that still allow you to see right through, kind of like the guest eye level. That's why I love these eucalyptus trees. Not only are they just from Australia, but you can see them in so many other places of the world, and they just make for really excellent tree coverage. And if you're making a plaza kind of like this, hedges always go such a long way. I'm rotating these by holding the Z key, and this essentially allows me to perfectly line these hedges up with the fence work that we have on over here. I'm going to leave a gap right in the middle right there because I want to give a little bit of interest to this middle plaza. And even though this is supposed to be a heart, I'm going to use it right in here as a way to kind of cap off the edges of the hedges. This basically just has them look a little bit more realistic, gives them a little bit more interest. And sure, we'll throw King Coaster in here. I feel like he's welcome. Now, sometimes these middle areas can get a little weedy, so I'm going to be throwing in just a little bit of bracken fern just to help make a little bit more greenery in here. Always make sure to change up the sizes too. I'll have a nature tutorial relatively soon for Planet Coaster, but always make sure to keep it a little bit brighter in here and make sure to keep it a little bit interesting. And whether that's changing out the sizes of whatever plants you're using, say for example the heather plant in here, it's always so helpful just to give your eye a little bit more interest in seeing how the different shapes of the plants can really come to life. I'm going to include a few bushes in here. I'm using the creosote bushes. They are so helpful, and they are honestly some of the best looking plants in the game. Planet Coaster also came with a whole bunch of different rocks in here, so we can see that we have tiger rocks, we have Mediterranean rocks, which are these very nice, beautiful, bright whites. These tropical rocks are a little bit darker too, and we also have temperate rocks. I think for our purposes right here, the temperate rock is going to be a lovely decorative rock in here, so I'm going to use these. And the best part about these rocks is that from no matter what angle you use them at, they're always going to look so good. So I kind of like to align these against whatever round surfaces I have, and then essentially with the V key, I kind of lock it in place, and then I'm able to kind of tuck it into the ground like that. And then from there, I can get into the nitty-gritty of some little extra details. One of my favorite things is just to add a little bit of dirt in here to really help it come alive. And you can use different types of terrain paints too. It really helps make an area really stand out. Now, one of the tricks that I have learned is lining the edges of the paths as well. Essentially, I take a darker kind of terrain color, say for example, I really like that dry dirt. And then I kind of just follow the pathway and have a little bit of this kind of peeking out. You can always change these out for whatever textures or whatever colors that you prefer. But for me, I absolutely love the look that this has. I think that this area needs just a little bit more interest, so I'm going to add some of these arrowwood bushes in here. They're a really awesome way of creating nice foliage cover. Now, I do want to make this path really stand out, so I'm going to add a little bit of a centralized path trail right in here. This essentially just serves as a really easy marker for where guests should really be walking, and it keeps them on the main thoroughfare in case if you have a relatively busy park. And the best part about these paths too is that you can also use that tiny little edit tool to really round out those edges in there. So helpful. And again, I can use the draw tool in case if I want it to kind of taper off around right over here. And I essentially just line it up like that. Now you do need to connect it up right at the end, which is a little bit of an issue, but once you actually get that set up, it's all good. Now, I really don't like this, so what I'm going to do is essentially select that piece right there, then just merge it in on itself. And I would say this plaza is looking very good, but in order for it to really be a plaza for me, I need some areas for my guests to sit down. If you navigate to the building menu and then you come down here to Path Extras, you can find all the interactive elements of the Planet Coaster 2 items, I suppose. Over here, I'm going to be using the Planet Coaster benches because they are just very nice and very bright. But essentially, I can line these up after I choose like the right color. What if I want, yeah, nice hunter green. I feel like that's a really awesome color. Oh yeah, these are all flexi color. That makes me very happy. So yeah, a nice hunter green with a little bit of tan elements. I think that is going to look very good. So every so often, I will just place down some of these. You might notice that the FlexiColor items don't retain. All you have to do is just select the original one, then replace it. And I can come throughout here and just essentially just make all these lovely areas for your guests to sit. Just perfectly line those up, and it's starting to look very good. And if you want your guests to sit on the center of this little island over here, you absolutely can do that. And not only that, but there are also bins that we can place down here as well. What I absolutely love about the bins this time around is that they are so flexible. Like, if you really want this kind of bin over here, I really do love the colors on this. I love the shape, not the colors, but we can change out the colors. We can change that to these ones right over here. So if I really do like that hunter green aesthetic that I'm going for, I can essentially just line these guys up right over here. For bins, I typically like to set two next to each other. Obviously, there's not really a recycling bin in Planet Coaster, but this essentially just gives me that kind of satisfaction that, hey, my guests are at least pretending to recycle. And yeah, once you actually line those up, it starts to look incredible. I typically don't like to keep the bins too close to the guests though. So say for example, I have a bench right there. I would never put a bin right next to that. I feel like, especially at a theme park, it's going to be hot, it's going to smell, and it just will not be a pleasant experience sitting down right there. So I always like to make sure my bins are at least a couple meters away from the guests. Now, it's not that common, but sometimes you will see nice shady areas or shaded umbrellas for your guests, so I will absolutely do a little bit of color work on here and get these nice bright kind of pinkish kind of sails for these guys. Now, I'm sure you're probably saying, Leaf, why isn't it green? Well, I like to have a little bit of conflicting colors just so that the eye has something to look towards. And yes, that is starting to look absolutely fantastic. Now, I do have this set on the workshop. These are potted plants. I essentially made these for my Atlantis park, but you can use these for any of your parks. They're on the workshop right now. But I think for my park, I'm going to start to steal a couple of these. I really like the way that some of these plants do look, and I think I will want this ficus tree right over here, yeah. And I'll take this elephant ear plant, and I can just delete the rest of these and move these guys right over. And from there, we can start to decorate the rest of the plaza by adding these plants wherever we honestly want. Say, for example, we want a couple next to the trash bins so that it doesn't really smell as much. And I like to kind of pair these up too. Let's just say, for example, I kind of shrink this bad boy down a little bit so that the ficus trees have a couple of friends. And of course, you can edit these blueprints however you want. It's on the workshop for you to use, so if you don't like whatever plants are in there right now, you can change those out. I will change the lighting a little bit though so we can see just a little bit better. Now, what is super important to me, however, is making sure that everything feels in line with each other, so I can use the guest mode as a way to kind of experience this how I typically would in a park. I would kind of pretend to sit down right here. And yeah, I'm really liking how all of these angles are starting to look. We do, however, need some lampposts. If you just search up lamppost or just post in here, you'll get a whole bunch of different ones, but I think we're going to keep it basic today. And yeah, I typically don't like to have these be super loud because the lighting is going to be working very much for itself over here. We can change it out for whatever color we want. Let's just say we want it to be a nice crisp blue. We can do that, and basically we just pop in here and start adding it wherever. I would recommend keeping it relatively even with each other, so if I have 3 on that side right over there, I'll probably do 3 on this side too. And say, for example, we want to see what it looks like at nighttime. That gives us a really good idea of how these plazas are going to look when it does start to switch over to nighttime. In fact, we could start to play with this even more. If I want King Coaster over here to be lit up, I can take one of these modern wall lights, you can find that right over there, and with align to surface on, I can essentially tuck this right into the rock, line it up just a little bit so it's out of the guest view, and we can light up King Coaster. And typically if one light isn't enough, you can also add another one right on that to increase the intensity. Switching back to daytime, however, there is a little bit of an issue over here where it feels like the rest of this plaza just feels a little bit dinky on the outside. There are a whole bunch of different stuff. There's a whole bunch of different options in the scenery brush over here, and since I do want some temperate park trees to be added in here, I can switch this out for a little bit more of a smaller brush size as well as a smaller intensity, and then we can essentially just add all of these trees in here and just help it feel so much more compact. This is honestly kind of crazy because the intensity is so low, but it feels like there's so many trees. But hey, that's no biggie. We can also delete these individual trees in here and switch them out for whatever we want. In fact, if I feel like these trees are a little bit too big, I can scale all of them down at once. It's so helpful. So if I want to do that on the other side, I can do that as well. So this plaza is really lacking just a little bit more of a focal point, so I think I want a statue in here. Or at least something to give a little bit of interest. I think the Planet Coaster logo is going to be very appropriate for this. I think I'll size it up just a little bit, and that way we'll have something to look forward to. I'll change out this base for something that I typically call go away green. It's a kind of technique of using a much more of a lush kind of foliage like green as a way to kind of hide it from the eye. And then we can change the Planet Coaster logo to be just a little bit more blue. I really like that. I don't like the rotation. I rotated it. There we go. And because this is typically considered wild out here, I will be adding just a little bit more ferns just to help this area come alive a little bit more. Absolutely scaling them up towards the back as a way to kind of make a little bit of a depth of field effect. Or what would you call that? A sense of scale, I guess? So yeah, smaller plants up front is what I typically recommend, and then larger ones you can kind of tuck in the back. And then I could just group all these up and then essentially just place them right over here. It's a little bit of a cheaty little thing, but you know what? It's fine. That's what scenery groups are for. It's really just to help you build easier and faster, and honestly, I love how this looks. Now, I think we will need a little bit more of a focal point, so I will be adding a little Ferris wheel in here, just so that we can have this plaza have a little bit more of a purpose. And honestly, at this rate, it's just going to be a let's build. This is essentially a let's build video, but I really want the effect of this to come through. I don't know. So yeah, I can switch it back out for the cobblestone paths. I want that railing that we had in there earlier. And then this little exit plaza, I can have this be just a little bit curved and line it up right over here. Then I can kind of tuck that right in there. I could switch the bench right over there. And there we go. We can attach just one queue line in here. Now, of course, I could do kind of like that iconic switchback queue, but I think for a ride like this, we don't need to do anything too fancy. I think I will want just a little bit more of an organic looking queue line right there. I really love the look of that. And because this is going to be a nicely manicured area, I will be adding a whole bunch of hedges in here. And you know what? I'll do the same thing on the other side as well. And as I said before with the terrain, I can do just a little bit of dirt lining in here. It really looks awesome once you have that underneath the hedges. And I'll do it around the Ferris wheel, even though this isn't really a Ferris wheel tutorial. And yeah, since we have everything in groups, we could just go through here and just start placing everything down. Per paths as well, you can also use the customize brush to actually place down paths on top of the Ferris wheel and other flat rides. And just to round this tutorial out, I'll also kind of decorate the outside of this kind of little plaza area with the same bushes that we used in the interior. Really no rhyme or reason with this. I'm kind of just placing them wherever I feel like fits them best. Again, with scaling too, I can size these up and I could do all my giant bushes everywhere. And since I've already placed smaller bushes, I can go in with some tinier ones too, just to help round it out. Absolutely getting some of these arrowwood bushes in here too. It's just a really awesome way to help break out any sightline gaps that you want to have. So say, for example, you don't want guests to peer through these trees, you can just place down a bunch of these arrowwood bushes, and it should make some really nice foliage cover. I'm always making sure to rotate these pieces too, because it just helps it look so much better. Having repeated textures and patterns in here really is just the death sentence of something not looking good. I will throw in a couple rose bushes in here too, because I feel like they're just nice and pretty. But I think that looks pretty good. What do you guys think? I truly hope this tutorial was able to teach you just a little bit more about the new path functionalities of Planet Coaster 2 and give you an insight into how to build like a Planet Pro. Let me know if this is a series that you would like to see continued in the future. I absolutely adore putting these things together, and who knows, maybe we could even make our own little park just making tutorials. Thank you all so much one last time. I absolutely appreciate it. If you guys did enjoy the video, be sure to drop a like down below and consider subscribing. I am absolutely adoring putting out Planet Coaster 2 videos, so I can't wait to put out even more for you all. Take care and have the most wonderful of wonderful days. Bye-bye.